Welcome back. Well, yes, as you've seen there, we've got His Excellency Professor Ben Ayade, Governor of Cross River State, joining us this morning on Sunrise. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
Well, we'll start off with where you were yesterday at that launch, because going through some of the dailies today, some of the concerns were, as much as they were glad to see all of that produce in the sector at that time, but questions concerning sustainability, how is that going to affect is it, or should we expect, and how soon, that it impacts positively on the price of a bag of rice out there in the market? So what's the thinking concerning all of that?
Sustainability is critical. Indeed, the quantum of rice, over 1 million bags of rice in one location, is actually very commendable. And I'd like to commend Mr. President on this. In terms of sustainability, what is required is to support agriculture through a semi-industrial process towards achieving agro-industrialization. Smallholder farmers will only get sustained if this anchor borrowers program is sustained. But where there is a change of government in the course of time after 2023 elections, and these people have not reached a stable production limit, this may not be sustainable. And that's why my strong recommendation is that we should institutionalize the principles of agro-industrialization, which means, take a typical case of Thailand, the infrastructural responsibility towards agricultural farmlands is the responsibility of government. Government provides irrigation services, it provides all forms of training to farmers, provides fertilizer support and uptake. The farmer has a responsibility of nurturing his farm only. But in Nigeria, he gets money. From just small money he gets, or that money from central bank, that's the same money he does the tilling, the land clearing, the plowing, the planting, the harvesting, the milling, and then the selling. That is too much for a small farmer. So to make it sustainable, government will have a robust program to uptake some of the responsibilities that otherwise are being held by these rice farmers. These big pyramids come from an organized effort. By example, the Kebbi State Governor, Jigawa State Governor, and all the deliberate efforts of the food security program of Mr. President. How sustainable this is, unless we institutionalize it, it can be successful in this regime and start failing if we don't have a proper government that is coming in 2023. But the price of rice in the market is a reflection of how we sustain this program. Today, the price dangles between 22 to 35,000 naira, depending on the variety, quality, whether it's short grain or long grains. That's where it is. But I think that for us to sustain this production, in spite of the fact that there's a speculated report that about 2 million metric tons of rice is still illegally imported into this country. If those borders are closed, and we make a law that no foreign rice in the Nigerian market, but I think definitely becomes sustainable when everybody becomes dependent on local rice.
You know, yes, you were given that presidential honor for what you've done as well in that rice value chain. And then we've seen you just now mention some states, and we've also seen state-to-state dealings at the government level with this product. So the question then is, where is the private sector? Because shouldn't they be the ones also driving some of these things, which will perhaps to a large extent, if you agree, address that sustainability question?
Oh, you're definitely right. And that's why I have advocated that instead of having an anchor borrowers program, perhaps we should now advance to an anchor farmers program, where there's a major private sector farmer, perhaps 2 or 3 per state, where we have predominance of rice cultivation. Now, when you have an anchor farmers program, we know that there's a major farmer, for example, in Ogoja, Cross River State, and he gets all the massive inputs, long-term loans, and supporting with all the irrigation and agro-industrial infrastructure. Then it becomes sustainable. It becomes a private sector who would now do a smallholder scheme that are all aggregating to him at the aggregation center and as a matter of fact, the processing center. I agree that government cannot continue to drive and lead the rice revolution. It gets to a point where the private sector should take over, and it's gradually happening. Dangote, for example, is coming into the rice game. Most of the rice mills are privately owned. Most of these farms are privately owned. We at governors level only come in to be able to create a direction, a focus. And I had mentioned those two states because the two states have the official position of the government under the Presidential Task Force on Rice to be able to drive the rice production process. Not necessarily because they are governors of those states, but because they chair and head and drive this rice revolution program. On my award is the application of technology to bring value. The footfall of rice production cannot increase when we continue in the atavistic way we do. For example, somebody is still growing rice with seeds. The factors that govern the growth, harvest, and yield per hectare depend on so many variables. Example, if the seed itself is dormant by nature, if the seeds fall on a barren soil, if the seed has such a thick shell, if the nutrients in the monocotyledon or in the cotyledon of the seed is worn out, if the seed is poorly stored. And so Nigeria's yield is about 1.5 to 2 tons per hectare because the primordial approach is so rudimentary. It's as old as history. But technology has come in to make provision for all of that. In the process you find in Cross River State, we have a structure and system where our seeds are produced by ourselves. And seed means that we'll be able to reduce the water content to as low as 12% and store below 8 degrees centigrade so that the metabolic activities of the seed is arrested until such a time that you do the planting. It is when you plant that there is merismasis occasioned by the seed trying to germinate. So the stem comes out. When it comes out, as soon as it starts to grow in leaves, the xanthophylls and the yellow carotenoids will help in photosynthesis. The plant can become self-dependent. But where the seeds are already depleted in nutrients because of long storage, the stem would not be able to germinate. So the factors that govern the yield of a land, a hectare of land, are controlled by seedling method. And that's why the seedling technology, which means don't grow rice with seeds, grow with seedlings. That's the technology all over the world. It's still in Nigeria that we're still cultivating with seed by broadcasting. That is actually very, very unproductive. That is what gave me my award for bringing innovation and technology and digitalizing agriculture. And that's the way to go. Indeed, the farmers in Cross River, and just wait a while and you see what will happen. We also are going to make sure that no paddy leaves Cross River State so that the Ogoja rice mill would have enough rice to mill. And once we do that, you see the sequestration of paddy availability in the marketplace because thousands of trucks comes into Ogoja, which stretches all the way from Obubra Abbey down to Obaliko and Obudu. And take our paddy because before now, when I was a senator, I went into Dueka and I saw rice being spread all over the tar roads because there's no mill. So people from other states come buy off our rice. With what we have done now in Ogoja, with the technology we're using, getting about 8 to 10 tons per hectare, the farmers are happy. And I think this is the way to go for Nigeria. We must make sure that planting is not done by man. There are transplanters. You just sit on in and drive like a car, and it's doing the planting. Why would you put people through such slavish, atavistic, old-fashioned methods of business and think that they should go ahead and do what their parents did and did until got to old age and died with nothing to show for it? So agriculture is very unattractive to young people. And that's why we have a Green Millennium program in Cross River State to ensure that we bring in the densification of young people to see the value and beauty and the wealth that comes with agriculture when it's supported with technology. So technological revolution in agriculture is what Cross River is bringing to the table. And basically that's the philosophy to drive a sustainable agricultural program because nobody will continue to go the way we are going, including the new technology, which is fertigation, drip irrigation, pilot system where you do broadcasting using modern irrigation technology. We can't continue to wait on rain-fed irrigation as a means of growing rice.
Well, Your Excellency,